That's how you brush the ball, right? So what's a common mistake many players make? They think that using the wrist means at the moment of contact, you have to actively roll or flick your wrist. They insist on rolling the wrist like this. If you have this issue, comment down below. Now, have you noticed that often when you flick your wrist actively, you tend to hit the edge of the paddle? No, it shouldn't be like that. You hit the edge, right? Sometimes it feels like a thin edge hit, and the ball isn't very spinning. Then it gets counter-looped, or gets blocked fast, right? The key to using the wrist is just one thing. The wrist acts before contact. Its main role is to store energy to coil. What you must not do with the wrist is actively power the shot at the moment of contact. It's connected to your backswing, your weight transfer, your whole body, your core, right? You coil the wrist back first. As part of that, it's passive at this stage. Then you unleash the power. Your wrist is already loaded before contact. After coiling, your body drives forward and the wrist is just along for the ride. It's not the main power source, right? It transmits the force. Once that power is transferred to the ball at the exact moment of contact, your job is simple. Your fingers and wrist firm up. You break, you stop the motion. You don't coil and then flip the wrist afterwards. That actually kills the power and wastes the wrist's potential. Got it, friends? At contact, you should be gripping the racket, locking the wrist and fingers in place, like this. See this? It's a grab and a sudden stop. Visually, though, and when you watch top players, for example, it looks like they're snapping the wrist. But that's just a visual effect. In reality, the wrist is being passively whipped through. It's whipped, and then you actively grip and stop the racket. You actively grab through the ball. That's when you truly utilize the wrist for spin, suddenness, and explosive power. It's not about finishing the stroke with a soft, floppy flip. You see how loose and weak that looks? It's nothing like the solid, powerful effect you're aiming for. Visually, it's completely different. But this is what you see, right? Is this the motion? Only with that firm stop can you really drive the ball through. And you see those powerful backhand loops against backspin. That's actually proper wrist usage. Same for the forehand loop. Don't actively try to turn or twist the ball sideways with your wrist, you know? Don't actively flip it. Instead, open up. See? Open up, let the body drive and the wrist and fingers grip. A firm grab, see? Let me show you more clearly. Grab, see, the wrist grabs. That creates a pulling in motion. Grab, and it pulls in. A very compact, explosive wrist action. The wrist is for that explosive stop. It's not about the wrist actively flipping after. You're trying to break, right? If you flip, where's the breaking? There's no space for that. First, and second, wrist power alone is not enough for a high-quality shot. You won't generate high ball quality, understand? So, for both forehand and backhand wrist usage, the power must come from the body's rotation first. Then, the wrist and fingers actively break and actively grip. Honestly, this tip is worth its weight in gold. Priceless knowledge. This is something you won't learn in many amateur clubs. Pros know, but amateur halls rarely teach this key detail. Because once you understand this theory, it applies everywhere. Even for your serves, right? Do many of you serve like this? With a little wrist flick at the end? No, actually, the wrist opens first, see? Just like the backhand, you store energy first. Wrist stores energy, then you have that gripping action. That's when the wrist moves. It's not, open the wrist, contact the ball, then flick. That extra flick afterwards is often a misunderstanding. Or learning from instruction that's not the most accurate. There are many ways to use the wrist, but just moving it doesn't mean you're using it effectively. The key question is, can you successfully transfer that wrist action into the racket and onto the ball? Can you transfer it to produce the spin speed, the brush, and the power you want? Can you generate that friction and force? Watch my hand. I open it wide. You can all practice this with me. Everyone, practice with me. You can follow along. Watch me. Open stop, open stop, open stop. That's the feel. That's where the hand feel comes from. Not from just wiggling it like this all day. A little wiggle. You practice that, then on the table, your shots are all loose. No power, no control. Let me demonstrate with a serve. It'll be clearer. See, my fingers are loose. Fingers and wrist are relaxed before the forward swing. Then, using the body's momentum, the body initiates the power, creating inertia. The body drives, inertia carries the arm whack. At that whack moment, you strike. The wrist is weaker than the body, right? So it naturally gets whipped along. The wrist is thrown by the momentum. It follows the rhythm. The wrist's strength is absolutely less than the body's. Right, it depends on the body. The body drives it. Didn't get it? Pay close attention. Watch, body drives. If your wrist is relaxed as the body moves, doesn't the wrist just get flung along? That means the wrist has already received the transferred power from the body. Your body weighs, what, 100 pounds? Man or woman, if you're an adult, you're over 100 pounds, right? So at this point, your wrist and fingers only need to do one thing. Actively break. Lock it. That breaking, that locking, happens exactly at the moment of contact. So let's say you're serving side spin. I just lock it here. The ball will be very spinny and sideways. Right, for a heavy spin serve or a no-spin float, that lock makes the ball dip. So the wrist and finger must be more passive. They are mainly passive. They have just one active job, to break, to stop and grip the ball firmly. Let me give you a simpler example. I'll stop a ball. Watch me open up. Look. See, if I can break right here. I can control the ball right in front of me. Watch. See, it stays in front, right? Otherwise, you often shank it. Understand, friends, watch. I break here, and I control it in front. If I go to here and then try to use my wrist to actively spin it, see how the ball flies uncontrolled. Completely wild. It won't settle in front of my body. It just flies off, see? Look, this is how you lock it down. It's more of a turn and pull. Turn and pull. Backhand 2. Wrist leads in the backswing. At contact, you have the body. Even without much body, use a little forearm. Forearm pulls in bam, and stops. That power, that break, see, get that feeling. So you can practice at home. Take a ping pong ball. If you have one, hold it. Hold it in front of you, and at the moment of contact, you need to have that action. You can do it into steps. Step 1, cock the wrist in. That's storing energy. After storing, at the contact moment, as you hit the ball, have that feeling of breaking, pausing. Stop the ball. Even for brushing, you stop on the ball. Look. Too big a swing, no. Brush stop. Brush stop. There you have it. If you learn this point, type 1. This is a major misconception for many players, especially on the backhand. Forehand, some get it. But on backhand, people think, even for loops, you use the wrist. Yes, you do use the wrist. But there are many ways to use it. Many ways, but only a few are efficient. Only one is really optimal. The one I'm showing. That's why you see pros, they rely more on footwork and anticipation. For a flick, or side spin, a curveball, when the ball has some bend, we first position ourselves. For a flick, don't you bend your legs, right? Weight goes down. As I'm lowering, my wrist is already twisting in. My wrist is already loaded. So I only need, at contact, to execute that break. What does breaking do? First, it concentrates the energy. It creates explosiveness. Second, and crucial, it enables the most important thing for getting the ball on the table. What's the most important point? Control. Generating power isn't hard. Power is easy. After releasing, you must control it so that, no matter how high the quality, it has to land on the table. Landing it is the key. So in that final moment, the wrist is more for control through the power. In fact, control should be the priority. Understand? Don't store energy, release it, and then add an extra wrist flip. That extra rotation is what leads to, as someone said, you missing the ball, hitting air. You feel like your flick is weak. Same with my reverse pendulum serve. Watch my reverse pendulum, right? You can see there's an inward pull, right? A pulling in motion. After pulling in, is that storing energy? Yes. But I don't just mindlessly fling it out at the end. But a lot of incorrect teaching tells you to just extend out. How to put it, you can't say it's totally wrong either. After all, if you extend out, you can still get the serve on the table. But the spin from that, compared to my way, twisting in and then releasing, where the wrist is braced and firm, and in that instant, you break. The spin difference is night and day. So, like I always say, when you hire a coach or attend a class, when you come to a live stream, do you want to learn excellence or just the ordinary version? There are two levels, right? Now that you're all here, taking the time to share this lesson with me, listen intently, feel it deeply, okay?